tell you what it is. They'll just say something like looking for a personal statement, a statement of interest, a goal statement. It's called different things by different programs. If there's a word limit, that program will set it. So if they only want 1,000 words, then you're going to see that. If they don't give you a word limit, that means they're not expecting one. But a good rule of thumb, please do not make this statement any more than 2 pages. Often 1 to 1.5 pages is going to get across what you need to get across. They want you to be clear cut and concise. If you start going into 4 or 5 pages, you're not writing your life story, and they don't want to read all of that. So about 1 page, and I don't know how many words that would be, but about 1.5 pages at the most. Yes, I saw a hand go up. Yes, ma'am.
What would be the difference between a personal statement and a cover letter?
There's not a lot of difference. That's an awesome question, because oftentimes when I'm comparing a personal statement, it's really not a lot of difference in the concept. Because a cover letter is like your personal statement as it applies for a job.
Right.
So, but there are different nuances, because your cover letter doesn't need explanation of certain things. But just like a cover letter is tailored to every job, your personal statement is tailored to every position or every school. So some programs, and I don't know if any of you in here are applying to any of those, will have one system of application. So they only want one personal statement, and multiple schools can see that. In that case, you really can't tailor but so much, because every school is going to see it. However, if you have to submit to the 5 to 7 or however many programs of your choice, that means you're going to have about 5 to 7 personal statements. Here's the good news. That does not mean you have to start from scratch 5 to 7 times. Once you have your basic outline done, all you're doing is tailoring little nuances that are going to match each program. Because your story isn't going to change drastically. If it does, I'm going to be wondering which personality I'm talking to today. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is there like something like you just don't put in there that like they don't want to read normally?
I tell people it's my weight. I don't think they want to know that. There are some things that you don't want to discuss, but that's kind of personal for everyone. I've had some personal statements that go into way too much personal detail. The fact that it's called a personal statement will lead you astray. So some people go into all of their problems and issues. Now, there's a time and a place for everything. I don't need a half a page or a whole page worth of problems or issues, and you haven't even told me how you overcome it, or why I'm even reading about this as it relates to your application into this program. So there are sometimes people want to show that I've overcome adversity and I've been able to gain a new profound view on life. Great. Get to that point, because I don't have to get through 3 paragraphs to read that. There is where the problem will lie, and that's why bringing it to someone can help you to tailor it up to what are we trying to get to with this statement. Like, I've had personal statements that start off with about a page worth of their story, and that's it, just the story. Where they were born, where they're from. No, that's not what they're looking for. So there will be things, most of you are going to stay clear of that. And then there are others who just need to learn how to tailor it up. This is what I usually get when it comes to personal statements. I've read a lot of them in my day. By the time they get to me, they're like, please, and just look at it. I can't see it anymore. And that's great, because once they get to that point, that means you've actually, number one, put in work. I want you to put in work on your personal statement. It is your document, not mine. I'm not telling you my story. I'm not telling the schools my story. I'm trying to help you tell yours in the most clear-cut format that you possibly can. But so when you get to the point with a personal statement, if anyone, how many of you here feel like you're really good with your writing skills? Exactly. There was a hesitation, some I did get at least one hand, but that's usually what I get. Like, I don't even know if this sounds right. Does it even sound good? And that kind of frustration, I don't want you sending that document out. Remember what I said before. This is you on a piece of paper. It's representing you when you can't be there. If you feel confused about it, why should they feel confident about it? And if that question is still in your head, come to the Career Center. That's all we can do, is try to help you gain that clarity and be that confident about your piece of paper. So overview of what we're going to talk about. We have the purpose, how to prepare, and how to be productive and proficient. I love my P's there. P's, Pippin, I don't know. I just thought about that day. It was a good day. I had coffee. I really don't know what's going on. So what is the purpose of your personal statement? We're going to cover that shortly. How do you prep yourself for the personal statement, and how do you make sure that it's a productive document? In other words, it's working for you as it's supposed to, and that it's being proficient. So what is its purpose? I need to get this little thing off. It is there to highlight your qualifications. So A lot of times I'll get, but they'll see that on my application. And this is where a personal statement and a cover letter are great as a comparison. Because just as a resume and a cover letter complement each other, yet are two completely different documents, so is your application and your personal statement. Yes, they may reflect some of the same things, but what you can't do on a lot of applications is tell your version of that story. Most of the time, you're just giving a list of things. So you may be able to list out your volunteer activities, but can you really describe how meaningful they were and how it's prepared you for this moment? And the same with shadowing, et cetera, et cetera. Demonstrating your writing ability. So when you're going into a master's program, even a doctoral program, they're often very heavy writing intensive. So why would they not want to see your writing skill up front? And if you don't have good writing skills, it will hinder your progress. So you want to be able to, that's again, getting that clear-cut thought across without going through a lot of other information. That's why we want to make sure that we're tailoring through what you don't need, because you're giving them way too much. And oftentimes, hanging your own noose. Outlining your career goals. So again, they want to know, why is this program your next logical step? Why is their school your logical choice? They want to know these things, and they should also be covered within your personal statement. And then the ultimate goal of that personal statement is to get an interview. As stated before, the majority of programs still go through the interview process. I know a few don't do that anymore. It's to their detriment, because often they lose that personal aspect of knowing who's coming in their program to make a decision solely based upon paper. I'm weary about it because, like was stated before, we're also human beings. Like, I'm not a piece of paper, it's just my representative. But sometimes it's much more efficient for them to use that and take away that personal element. But the object is to get an interview or to get accepted. Once you're in person with someone, that's a whole new element. So that's when we get into the interview prep. How do you talk about yourself? Some people are much more comfortable writing about themselves than they are talking about themselves. So that we're not going to talk about interview prep today. I would love to build that in one day if I ever can. So it's definitely a worthy document. This is usually what I get. Where do I start? You start here. You start where you start. Some of you, how many of you actually already have a personal statement developed? All right, well, you start with a piece of paper and a pencil. Go ahead and write out your outline or on a computer. Get your outline. Review your activities, your accomplishments when you decided to pursue this career path. The handout that you were given gives you a lot of interesting topics to think about. But after you have brainstormed what a lot of these are, brainstorm how relevant they are. So think about this one question. How have your previous experiences prepared you for this opportunity? And now you review those experiences. So this is essentially what I'm saying here. When did you decide to pursue it? What was that impact? We call it the aha moment. When was the moment you said, this is it? Some people have profound aha moments. They had it when they were a child and they went through this. And I had a speech impediment when I was younger. I went to a speech pathologist and I realized how instrumental they were at my confidence level, and I decided I want to do that. That's wonderful. Some people decide their second year of college, after they've done a different kind of research, that this is what they want to do. And it's okay. Just because yours may not be as profound as someone else's does not mean that you're not equally as qualified as somebody else. So don't worry so much about what others have done. If you've been interacting with other pre-clubs and they've given you all this information, you will wear yourself out trying to compare yourself to your peers as it pertains to your path. Think about what you've done, and let's get that on paper. Do your research. So I heard a little bit about this earlier. I came in on the back end because I was coming from another presentation. But if you don't know anything about the schools you're applying to, if you don't know anything about the programs themselves, then how are you going to tailor your personal statement to them? I love asking people, well, why did you choose this school? Well, they're actually the fourth one on my list. That's what I'll get told sometimes. I'm like, well, even as number 4 on your list, you still chose them for a reason. So tell me about that school. Tell me about their program. What kind of research projects are they into? What are the professors doing? And sometimes I get back, I really don't know. Well, that tells me you haven't done enough research. How can you make yourself in line with what that program is looking for and what they truly want if you don't even know what it is that they're looking for and what they truly want? And this is no different than looking for a job, really. Because for the next 2 to 3 years, that graduate program may be your job. So you need to take it just that seriously. And we have resources on our website such as ECU CareerNet, that's going to help you with researching these schools. We have graduate schools that register with us. There's ONET, that website is onetonline.org. So if you're trying to find out, like, what does it mean to actually be a physical therapist? There's some exposure that you've had, hopefully at this particular point. There's more exposure you're going to get, but ONET gives you a very clear-cut overview of what you should expect in writing, so that you can start to say, well, I kind of know how to do this a little bit. If they're saying that you need good communication skills and you feel you have good communication skills, let's reflect how you have good communication skills. So we're trying to tie you into why you're a natural fit for these programs. Creating an outline. So this is getting back to the basics. Some people start writing by just starting to write, and they'll come back and they'll reorganize later. That's me. I don't go through and say paragraph 1 this, paragraph 2 that. I don't do that. I'll just start, and then I'll go back through and I'll reorganize it until it starts to flow the way I want it to flow. So however your outlining takes place, begin with at least one. So know that your first document won't be your last. And if your first document is the one you submit, I really hope that you got an A on every paper you've ever turned in your life. And if you didn't, then make sure you bring it in for review. The themes and topics, this goes back to your handout. This is something physical to take with you. There are a lot of themes and topics covered up there. You don't want to talk about all of them. We really tell people to stick to 1, 2 things at the most. If you can't fit into a theme, think about the past, present, future model. This is what I've done. This is what I'm currently doing. This is what I look to do. That's a really easy theme to fit into. And you can build a lot of those things into that particular model. I get a lot of creative people that want to stay clear. They want to give them something new. I've had them compare their life to a bag of Skittles, and I didn't get it. And that's the problem. I've had people with really bad jokes. They have this comment, like, people that can't always get that. So if you have someone review it, I've had good stories, I've had not so good stories. I had someone who started off with a story from the patient's perspective, but they wanted to be the doctor. So something like that was like, well, why wouldn't you start off from the doctor's perspective? Because now I don't get where the connection is. So that's what I mean. You have to pick a theme that you're going to use. What is your angle, if you have one? And you don't need one to be successful. So developing your content, this is still covered on the page, but what are your qualifications? So if you have a high GRE score, you want to be able to reflect that. Go ahead and tell them that you have that high score. Your commitment to your education, drawing that together, your ability to study well, that's something that definitely every graduate program will want to see. But what if your GRE score isn't that high? We don't want you concentrating and harping on that in your personal statement. If you cover it, it should be quick, it should be brief. As far as what do you plan to do to bring it up? You're aware that your GRE score is only XYZ, but you're already planning to retake it to bring that up. That's all they need to know. To find out that something happened 2 weeks prior to taking the GRE, which affected the score, now you're getting into excuses. And excuses are telling them that you don't own your own mistake. And that's what I try to eliminate. What do you know about the profession? About the school? Again, you want to cover that. How did you get passionate about this? Now let's just get real. Some people choose what they choose because they know it's secure and there's going to be a good paycheck. That's not what you want to put in your personal statement. Even if it's going to be a great paycheck, why would you choose to do that? Because there are a lot of great ways to get a really good paycheck, but you've chosen this field. That's what we want to concentrate on. What influences have you had that have prepared you? So that's getting into your volunteering, your shadowing, any work experience that you've had that's relevant, and bringing it full circle as to why it's relevant. So sometimes I'll just get people recapping what they've done, but they've never made it make sense. So you do have to bring it full circle. Explaining special circumstances I've already talked about. If you're going to get into something like that, first let it be something that they should care about. So if your GPA isn't very high or something to that extent, and you want to explain that, but do not dwell there. Because again, that's where we hang our own notes. And discuss what you hope to contribute to the program. This is another big thing. They don't just want more students. They want people who are going to help their program grow, help their program stand out. If they're known for particular research and you have interest in that particular research, there is your contribution. That's a very simple example, but that's what I mean by drawing them together. If you never mention it, they may never know. All right, some tips and considerations, be specific. So again, don't dwell on a lot of things, but try to focus in on a few general things. Don't write like you speak. So that's another one that I'll get, and I can tell very clearly when I'm following someone's thought process. That's when we start skipping. I'll go from elementary school to college, then back to high school, then I'm in the future, then I'm back to college, and it's like that's someone writing like they speak. Avoid overusing I. It's a personal statement, so I is already implied, and you may have heard this in the past. Too many statements that begin with I back to back sound very repetitive. It's about just rewording that same sentence. You get the same expression across, but it doesn't begin with I. Something simple. Using big words. That was something I was smiling at when he was talking about the Kaplan test. The Kaplan's preparing for the GRE through Kaplan. When he showed one of the things up there about the big words and understanding what they mean, and I get this quite often in personal statements, the misuse of big words. And if you misuse it, it's only telling me that you haven't even thought to look up what this word means. You're thinking a big word is going to throw me off. I am no stranger to a computer. I will look up a word in a heartbeat if I don't know it. And there are often times when I'm just reading through and I'll pause right there like, I don't think they meant what that word means. And so I'll look it up. No, they didn't. Now they think that I'm stupid. Then you don't want people to think that way. That's an extreme. I don't think that you think I'm stupid if I get a word like that. But I'm just saying you don't want people on that wavelength when they're reading your document. You want them to be impressed. Consider the flow. So that is another big thing. That's what I work on quite heavily, is how does this document flow? And once we get into a good flow and good content, then we're good to go. Everybody should be a little bit different. It's okay. If yours doesn't sound like your roommates or your best friends, it's okay. As long as the flow is right and I have enough information that makes me feel like I can make a decision on this candidate based upon what I see here. If I still have questions when I read it, then I'm going to reflect those questions. That means that they'll have them. And then again, being original but not too cheesy or cliche. That person could not handle comparing their life to a bag of Skittles. Every time I turned around, it was another color of a Skittles bag. And I'm like, this really is not working for me. I don't like Skittles like that. So here you go. Now you have something coming into play that has absolutely nothing to do with your qualifications. But if someone compared their life to a banana, I probably would want to throw the paper away. Bananas are disgusting. You know, so you don't want to be too cliche. That is the shortened version of preparing for your personal statement. So you had some questions in the beginning. Have I created more questions? Yes.
I'm a sophomore. Should I start creating this now and keep going, or should I create this more towards my beginning of my senior year when I'm beginning to apply more?
No, then that's kind of a personal thing. If you're good with preparing in advance, I always think it's great to prepare in advance. At least get something down now and add to it as you go along. Because some people are last minute. Like I can be one of those people who can knock out a good statement in the last 2 to 3 months before the deadline. But everybody's not like that.
Right.
And it took years for me to get there because I have deadlines on my job now, and sometimes they'll tell me a week before something's due, and it has to be worded perfectly.
Right.
So I don't want you having heartache your senior year if you can avoid it. If you're in your senior year and you haven't started, well, it's crunch time. That means you need to have some document already begun, and go ahead and meet with us at the Career Center. Any other questions for me? All right, you guys, I'm gonna get you in a second. You guys have the survey. Please fill that out for me. I don't want my boss mad at me. So fill